keeping you informed and engaged. Now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jordan Sekulow.
Welcome to Sekulow. This is Jordan Sekulow. My dad, Jay Sekulow, also joining us. We're having to do the show again remote today. It's actually, if I could turn my camera around, snowing again where we're located. So on top of the 9 inches we already received and the ice under that, making sure our team is safe at our office down here, but still coming to you with all the latest news. And big news last night, Dad, with Hunter Biden, that they've, as of now, come to an agreement that on February 28th, he'll do a behind closed doors deposition with the Judiciary Committee staff. This linked more now to the fact that there is a actual inquiry that's been voted on for impeachment, so a little bit more subpoena power there. And so he's agreed to that and agreed after that to at some point have a public hearing at the committee as well. It's a big reversal for Hunter Biden and his team.
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, Hunter Biden is represented by a very competent lawyer, one of the best criminal defense lawyers in the country. He's a very, very good friend of mine, Abby Lowell. He represented Jared and Ivanka Trump during the Bob Mueller proceedings, so he was a really well-respected lawyer. What's interesting is whether he will actually testify or not. I don't know, because you could appear, but also at the same time assert your constitutional right against self-incrimination, your Fifth Amendment rights. That would constitute an appearance, so you could not be held in contempt of Congress. So the same thing could happen at a public hearing. He could assert his constitutional privileges, as Lois Lerner did when she was called before Congress on the IRS targeting scandal. So the fact that he's appearing in and of itself, while it's being hailed as this great breakthrough, in reality, it may just be that he's appearing and exercising his privileges, or maybe he's going to talk. I have no idea, but I think I would not read too much into it at this point.
Until we know how he is cooperating. I mean, that is the key. And what kind of, if he's planning on answering questions or just asserting the Fifth. And then they have that strategic decision to say, do we want to bring him before the committee and make him assert the Fifth, 100 times, like Lois Lerner had to do? I think it was something like that, to basically show that they are stonewalling, the appearance of stonewalling an investigation. Of course, they're utilizing, it's still a constitutional right in the Fifth Amendment. But I think that, again, a strategy of looking like, hey, at least it makes them for the next month look like they're cooperating and that they're working with. So it kind of takes it off the table until we know what happens, at least a little summary of what happened behind closed doors, and if they move forward with the public hearing.
What's interesting here, and there's not too many lawyers that can speak to this like you and I can, because we've represented a president of the United States. There's only been 4 impeachments in the history of our country of presidents, 2 of them against Donald Trump. And we did the first one, which was the big one. And let's be realistic here. I think this lowering the bar on impeachment, we said it then, I'll say it again, unless Congress does, Jim Jordan's committee really comes up with evidence. He has not said he's ready to move to an impeachment proceeding yet. That if, be very careful, because this is setting the bar so low that it becomes nothing but a political weapon instead of an accountability tool. And that's what I'm concerned about in all of this. Now, there are a lot of allegations out there. We'll see what happened to those. But I do think that we have to be cognizant of the fact that don't lower the bar too much. But I think, unlike the Democrats, the Republicans are actually approaching it the right way, cautiously, getting witnesses, getting facts, getting evidence. There's a whole series of witnesses that are going to be testifying. So that'll be interesting. I think, look, we're in the middle of a political season now that is in full tilt. I watched yesterday on CNN Nikki Haley's town hall. She's up to a do or die, I think. And Jordan, I'll let you speak to this, a bit more your expertise than mine, but I think she's at a do or die primary in New Hampshire. If she doesn't win New Hampshire, I don't know how she goes on. I think Ron DeSantis also, by the way, pulled out of New Hampshire. He's kind of going radio silent right now. I think he's probably out of money.
Yeah, I mean, he's putting all his resources in South Carolina. We'll see if that's actually the case. Like I said yesterday, people on the ground in South Carolina will learn that real quick, and we'll know real quick that, is the news showing him there? Are we seeing 100 DeSantis events over the next couple of weeks where he's actually there in person? That costs money. Are the ads up? Everybody will be looking for that in the next coming days when it comes to South Carolina. Now, when it comes to New Hampshire, I think there's only two ways Nikki Haley gets a ticket out of there. A win over Donald Trump, even if it's just by a small percentage, or basic tie. Maybe she's 2 or 3 points behind, but did very well. That might give her enough energy to say, you know what, I'm willing to take this to South Carolina, my home state, the state I served as governor for 2 terms. I'm willing to go there and risk potentially losing my home state. So those are the 2 ways out for her. And again, I think the real way out is an actual win.
So if she were to win, let's say just hypothetically, if she were, she's 14 points. The latest polls, where it was showing 2 weeks ago, it was like a 4-point spread. It's now, the polls are showing, I think it's the Suffolk poll, the Boston Globe poll, and the St. Anselm poll. The noise you're hearing are tractors going down the, trying to clear some of the ice. Anyways, when you look at those polls, it's now like a 14-point spread. Now, assume she could close that spread and she actually wins. Let's take that scenario first. Yep. That gives her impetus to at least fight in South Carolina, her home state, right?
Then she's
not going to quit. She's not going to leave after if she were to win New Hampshire.
No, even if it was by the smallest of margins, she has to then go to South Carolina. Even if the polls there are looking bad for her, and you would imagine that there would be a bump for her there in her former home state, because people who are very familiar with her, who thought in these early polls she probably wouldn't make it. It didn't look like she would earlier in just a few months ago. It didn't look like she'd necessarily make it to South Carolina as a viable, final 3 candidate. Do enough of those people who right now say they're signifying support for DeSantis, or especially Donald Trump, who's got a major lead there, decide, you know what, I'll go with our home state former governor. Just didn't think at the time I was asked on that poll if she would even be a real contender. So that's what you have to look at. And does the money flow in? Does she get the hundreds of millions of dollars to try and really again extend this to Super Tuesday and kind of anything goes at that point? I mean, I think you could potentially even see that Donald Trump doing a debate with Nikki Haley. I don't think that's out of the question either. But that's again a big hypothetical that she could actually win New Hampshire. And the numbers that have come out lately after the big win for Trump in Iowa are the reverse for Nikki Haley.
No, that's right. And let's talk about that one for a moment. If she were to not be successful in New Hampshire, what does she do?
I think if she loses by 5, 10, 15 points or more, you don't want to risk your home state of South Carolina. I think you got to drop out, and that's what Ron DeSantis is hoping for.
Because they're all viable in 2028.
Yes, and again, these are younger candidates, especially DeSantis, to an extent, but Nikki Haley as well. But I think what you could see is the focus being if she gets beat badly in New Hampshire, 5 points or more, I don't think she goes to South Carolina and puts that risk in. Now, I could be wrong, but most of the campaigns I've worked on in the past, that's where they made the decision.
It's interesting also, today is the March for Life. And we had some real experience with that last year. We've been, of course, supporting March for Life for 40 years. And that was 2 pieces of litigation, one at the Smithsonian, at the Smithsonian Museum, and then at the museum over at the National Archives. We are in federal court on one of those now. One we got resolved totally, and our client's case has been closed. But let me tell you what our offices are doing up in Washington. We're on full alert. We have an article up at ACLJ.org empowering those who march for life in Washington. And we have in there, we're not going to tolerate, again, preventing pro-life speech from being silenced in federal buildings where people have the right to be. The resources there. If you are a family member, have trouble, we tell you exactly how to contact us at ACLJ.org while that's going on today. And we're excited that we got one of the cases resolved. They both have injunctions right now. So the students are free and their chaperones are free to go into those museums, wear a pro-life T-shirt or a pro-life beanie as they were last year. It was very cold. And we'll see what happens. We're monitoring it very, very closely. But I just want everybody to know, I know we're going to talk about a lot of other things, that we are moving forward in our defense of life there in Washington, D.C. At the same time, talking about Washington, D.C., count them, 52 amicus briefs filed in the case involving Donald Trump and Colorado. We represent the Colorado Republican Party as a party to the Supreme Court case. It's our case as well. We filed our brief 2 days ago, our brief on the merits. That's what it's called, respondent's brief on the merits. That has been filed. The other side will not file till the end of the month. Donald Trump's lawyers filed yesterday, too. I think both of our briefs, theirs and ours, were very, very good. 52 briefs came in, Jordan, yesterday. I have done a lot of Supreme Court cases and some really contentious one. I don't recall ever 52 briefs. And that's just on phase one here. There's going to be another round of this. When the respondents reply, I would expect it could be another 52.
Yeah, I mean, that, and again, from big names weighing in.
Yeah.
You have three former attorney generals, Republican attorney generals weighing in, big organizations weighing in, individual professors, law professors that are well known weighing in. I think, though, the big difference is we're on the merits. They're filing amicus briefs. That's still important. We do that work too at the ACLJ.
Yeah.
But I think again, it shows you that there are, and there'll be people on the other side as well. But there are so many different, unique arguments about why they are trying to do in these states with the 14th Amendment, Section 3 of that, are so wrong and unconstitutional. And I think that's what's great about all these briefs. The amicus briefs plus our merits brief, the Trump merits brief, is that there's so many ways.
A multitude, as we call it.
Can say this is not right. This is unconstitutional, and you could say it's because all the ways, or you could just pick one of them is enough.
Well, what we said in our brief was there's a multitude of ways that the Colorado Supreme Court is wrong and should be reversed. We're going to focus on four. The four that we focused on was, number one, the president is not an officer under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Officers are lower officers. Those are heads of departments and agencies and assistants, but not the president of the United States, who uniquely is a branch of government himself. It's the only branch of government where there's one person that's the branch of government, and that is the president of the United States and the executive branch. So he's not an officer of the United States. That's kind of argument number one. Argument number two is the fact that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment by itself doesn't create a right to be enforced. Congress, the fifth section of that same 14th Amendment says, Congress shall pass enabling legislation to enforce this. Now, because the restriction under Section 3 is removal in the event of engaging, keyword there, engaging in insurrection. What's important is, of course, and the Trump brief does a great job of laying out what the president's activities did not constitute an insurrection, and they focused a lot on that, which was smart. We focused in on, hey, wait a minute, self-executing, the president's not an officer, and the enabling legislation is insurrection. Well, the president's been facing 91 charges, although I think that Georgia case is crumbling as we speak. We'll talk about that in a minute. And the fact is that none of those charges involved the issue of insurrection. There's a statute, 18 U.S.C., Title 18 is the criminal code, 2383 is the insurrection crime of insurrection. He has not been charged with that anywhere. The only place that found him or charged in insurrection was actually at the proceedings before the United States Senate, upon which the Senate acquitted him of that charge. So he's never been charged with it in a federal court. He was charged with it in a legislative impeachment proceeding, and he prevailed. So that's nonsense. What Colorado did is nonsense. And as we said in our brief, it wreaks havoc. Plus, it's interesting. The statute, the amendment itself says that it prohibits holding office if you've committed the act of insurrection, found guilty of insurrection. And here's what's happening. This isn't holding office. This is running for office. And that you're allowed to run for office because the same Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says that Congress, by a 2/3 vote, can lift a disqualification. So the law is clearly in our favor. And then finally, we say it violates the First Amendment rights of our client, the Colorado GOP, the Republican Party of Colorado. Our brief has been filed, at least brief one. Now, the other side has until the end of the month to file theirs. So in about 10 days or so, they'll file theirs. Then we'll have 5 days, really over a weekend, to get our brief filed. So we'll have more to say there. And as I said, The lawyers for President Trump filed yesterday. Their briefs have been filed. So that's been done. So that case is now our side of it, the Trump Colorado GOP side of it, is now before the court. And your support of the ACLJ during that 3-day match was fantastic. I want to thank you for that, because we were able to raise almost, I think, pretty close to $400,000, which is matched. So that will at least help us with what we've occurred so far. We'll have a little bit more to say about that in February when we do the other brief. That's going to be due at the beginning of February 5th. But a huge thank you. And for those of you that want to still support the work of the ACLJ, let me encourage you to go to aclj.org. And we are at almost 19,050 of our ACLJ champions. Boy, it'd be great to end this weekend and into early next week at 19,100. So if you could support the work of the ACLJ monthly with any amount, you become an ACLJ champion. And you all, as champions, really helped us out during this matching challenge, which we appreciate it, because your gifts that you gave were matched and they were part of the match. So it was kind of a double blessing for the ACLJ there. We really appreciate it very, very, very much.
Yeah, and again, I encourage you to go to aclj.org. A sobering story to remind you about the ongoing conflict in Israel between those atrocious attacks on October 7th by Hamas is the unfortunate birthday of what we believe is the youngest hostage who was taken hostage, Kafir Bibas, who spent his first birthday as a hostage in the Gaza Strip. He was taken along with his other family members, I think a child, his mother, and the father was taken. Father was separated from the group. We still believe, Dad, that the baby is the 1-year-old now today is still with the mother, but again, just a tragic situation until they returned home.
It really is. I will tell you this, Jordan. Late last night, early in the morning, Israel time, is on the phone with our colleagues in Israel. Of course, the ACLJ has an office in Jerusalem. That office, as well as our office in Washington, and especially our office in Strasbourg, has been coordinating political meetings with members of parliament and leaders in various countries. That team is deployed next week to London and Madrid. I got to say this too, but Gregor and Christoph and our entire team there have done a great job. Kalev Myers, who is a colleague of ours in Jerusalem as well, has done a magnificent job, as has his team. And we're all working together in unity to keep the hostage issue front and center as this war goes on now to its 105th day. But that was a sobering reminder yesterday, that baby's 1-year birthday, acknowledged by his family yesterday, but of course in a very tragic way. And we're hoping and praying that they're alive. There is a move right now to try to confirm that more hostages are alive, but the situation is dire. The Houthi rebel situation continues to unfold. The Biden administration relabeling them a little late, like 3 years, as a terrorist organization. And look, I mean, this conflict is quickly spreading, and you've got Lebanon in the north with Hezbollah being much more aggressive. So you got a two-stage front right now. And Benjamin Netanyahu said, stop this two-stage solution talk. There is no talk of a two-stage solution. When we had that talk, we ended up having a massacre on in our southern border with Gaza. We're not doing that again. And I believe he's absolutely right. I think the talks of a two-state solution right now are preposterous. Who's going to govern this? Right now, the governing entity really for most of these areas have been Hamas. And by the way, with all of the success the Israeli military has had, the Israel Defense Forces, they are still launching rockets out of Gaza. So they're still getting their munitions in.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, there's so many conflicts ongoing. I think that this is going to be a key part of the campaign, too, as well, not just to politicize it, but the U.S., especially with the conflict with the Houthis, is right on the edge of something happening and really escalating that conflict, whether it's a U.S. vessel that they were actually successful in firing upon, loss of U.S. life, military men and women's life, defending that shipping lane, and, of course, pointing back to the fact that all of these groups that are going to continue to have those missiles to fire as long as they have someone to fire it, because they're going to continue to be resupplied by Iran. So You can't really ever beat Hamas 100% or Hezbollah 100% or the Houthis 100% unless you take Iran's ability to fund them off the table.
And Jordan, this is a kind of a sad way to end this portion of the segment. We got other news to talk about, and that is the Bibas family said this is the saddest birthday in the world. And our hearts and prayers and thoughts are with them. Our team, I need to tell you folks, our team in France has done a magnificent job. They have established meetings at the highest level. We're working with a friend of ours, Colin Bloom, who runs a very good organization in London. It's a Christian organization, but dealing with mostly with the conservative members of the parliament in Great Britain, but also works with the members of the Labour Party as well. He's very well respected. We've worked with him before. He volunteered his organization to. This has really been a collaborative effort. It's an interesting thing. I look at the relationships that we've been able to build by God's grace over the last 40 years, and we've worked with Colin on and off over years. Probably the last time was 5 or 6, 7, 8 years ago, maybe 10. But we've kept in contact. And here, lo and behold, what happens? Something like this comes, and it's like you were working with them yesterday. And Caleb, we've known for again, probably 25 years, and we've worked with his firm on and off over the years. But these relationships are important, and I need to thank our teams, which also means thank you, our ACLJ members, for making all of this possible, because without you, none of this happens. And again, if you're interested in becoming an ACLJ champion, we encourage you to do that at aclj.org. That means you'll donate monthly to the American Center for Law and Justice. So we encourage you to do that as well. I'll tell you what, the next thing we probably need to talk about is, I think this is going to be dramatic news in the next 2 weeks, Jordan. In the next week, 15th of February when the hearing is. This is a huge thing.
Yeah, so the district attorney for Fulton County, who hired that outside counsel that she had a previous relationship or current relationship with, we're not sure, paid him close to $700,000 to take over the prosecution of all those individuals, not just President Trump, in the Fulton County challenge to the election interference that she's alleging. And now we found out that once he was receiving that money, there were vacations potentially taken. There were meetings with the Biden White House. And so the judge in the case in Georgia, and this is one that's been a slow starter, has now ordered a special hearing into the potential misconduct of District Attorney Weiss as she began assembling her team to go to the grand jury, get the evidence together to try and bring again more of these charges against Donald Trump and the other individuals that she brought charges against.
What's interesting, the Washington Post, not friendly to Donald Trump generally, wrote this: a state judge overseeing the election, I'm reading this obviously, overseeing the election interference case against former President Donald Trump and others in Georgia has scheduled a hearing for February 15th to hear evidence regarding accusations that the Fulton County District Attorney, Fani Willis, and her lead prosecutor engaged in an improper relationship and mishandled public money. This can end up turning into a criminal investigation of her. I think that in that case, if this happens, what the lawyers have already started to do is file motions to dismiss the entire prosecution. When I say the entire prosecution, I mean the entire prosecution, which means the 4 or 5 people that were able to negotiate pleas would come back into court if he dismisses the whole thing and have their pleas rescinded, which of course they would do in light of this misconduct. So we'll see what the judge does on the 15th, but it's a significant blow to that prosecution.
I think people would want to know that what would the judge, so they have the hearing. If the judge believes there was misconduct,
yes,
does that mean that everything done up until that point has been tainted, and then those motions get filed?
Yeah. So there's a couple ways they could go. He could remove the 2 prosecutors, but if it's so tainted, which it looks like this is, because he was there since I think for the last year and a half of
he was the number 1. She's the number 1. He's the number 2.
Yeah. So what would happen is, at that point, I think the judge would dismiss the cases. That's what he should do, with prejudice, which means they cannot be refiled. And that's it. It's over. And then any of the 4 or 5 people that took pleas could go back into court, file motions to rescind their pleas. They would be granted. Case would be closed. Double jeopardy. Jury's been impaneled, cannot be brought again. So I think that case is about to have a dramatic turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Just really following that very closely too at the ACLJ. Let me encourage you as well. to become an ACLJ champion, as my dad was talking about earlier, with all these cases that we're working on, that we're telling you about, cases that I know are coming down the pipe that we'll be telling you more about as well. And of course, we'll have more work to do with this case at the Supreme Court once we see the reply brief at the end of this month from Crew and those individuals that want Donald Trump off the ballot in Colorado. But of course, this will affect every primary and caucus moving forward in many different states where there are blue states looking at trying to take Donald Trump off the primary ballot for now, and even the general election ballot in the future. So a lot of work there to continue to do at the ACLJ. And if you can become one of our ACLJ champions, it means you choose an amount that you're comfortable with donating each month. It will automatically happen, and you can do that at aclj.org. Become a champion and stand with us.